Get a word from Harvey Proctor, former Conservative MP. Harvey, good afternoon to you.
Good afternoon to you and to your viewers and listeners.
Nice to have you with us, and nice to speak again too. Now, you have been in the thick of accusation and all that goes with it, and it didn't just come from a little bit of tittle-tattle on social media. It came from people literally in Parliament talking about something. So you already have quite an understanding of how the system, as I just referred to it, can go horribly wrong. Whether it's in favour of somebody or against somebody, it can go horribly wrong. You wrote today a piece in the Times on this, and you feel rather strongly about the issue of having an inquiry into this grooming scandal.
I do. I believe that there should be an inquiry, a public inquiry, and I believe it should be chaired by a High Court judge or a retired High Court judge, for example, like Sir Richard Enriquez. Yes, in part, the IICSA or the J inquiry did look into some of this, but not much of this. Remember, it was set up by Theresa May when she was Home Secretary, not to discuss these matters, but really to investigate into what became Operation Midland. And she went on television, The Andrew Marr Show, and said that allegations eventually against me and other Conservatives and ministers and army representatives, Field Marshal Lord Bramwell, for example, were the tip of an iceberg. And of course, when Operation Midland collapsed, turned out it was actually not even the tip of an ice cube. When Operation Midland collapsed, they had this inquiry twiddling their thumbs about what to do. Yeah. And then they decided to continue, not as what they planned to do, which was politicians and child sexual abuse, but rather education, religion, and in part this matter of what is called wrongly grooming gangs, rape gangs, by Pakistani and Bangladesh men in certain northern towns. But they didn't really get to the bottom of it. There was no intention to get to the bottom of it. Now, let's look to see why politicians are up in arms about it now. It's because they don't want to get to the bottom of this matter. If you recall, before the general election, Sir Keir Starmer, leader of the Labour Party at the time, couldn't stop talking about his role as a DPP, inferring that because he thought he'd made a good job at the DPP, he would make a good job as Prime Minister. Ever since, he has prevented anyone asking him questions about his role as DPP. Why is he dragooning the Labour members of Parliament to vote down the opposition's demand for an inquiry? Because that inquiry, in part, would have to look at his role as the Director of Public Prosecutions. That he wants to run a mile away from that. This is all about a cover-up. I'm not saying it's a new cover-up. Cover-up has been going on for some time. But we do need a public inquiry with all the legal rights that go with a public inquiry from a point of view of still considering prosecutions. Yeah. And that is what the Labour Party are running away from.
It's interesting, Harvey, that, and I alluded to it at the beginning, when we have this sort of idea of politicians or the establishment or the system, whether it is the police, the CPS, certainly the Office of Prime Minister and Home Secretary, we see these sort of totemic positions as being infallible in many respects. Certainly they wouldn't, not in this country at least, that they wouldn't dare, they're not corrupt, they wouldn't dare make stuff up, they wouldn't believe something unless it was thoroughly investigated. These are thorough, and over the years of our democracy they've developed to be very credible positions that we respect. Now, you now know, as somebody that's been there, and something similar might be at play here now, as you've alluded to, that actually the very people that you think surely they're going to, they're not going to fall for this, or they're going to at least ask some questions and try and get to the truth. You know that people in high office, you just mentioned it there about Theresa May and her time as Home Secretary, are not quite as infallible as we like to think. In fact, there are more than a few cracks in the woodwork when it comes to the system.
Oh, yes. I was the subject of a homosexual witch hunt. I won't go into details about it now. I've talked about it a great deal in the past, and I've written a book, of course, called Credible and True. But you're right. Politicians are some of the most gullible people I've met. And the higher up the greasy pole you go, the more gullible they can get. And certainly on this issue, there is a gullibility. But in this case, it's with a political reason. And the political reason is that the Labour Party do not wish this matter to see the light of day. Yeah. That is why Starmer is dragooning his large majority in the House of Commons to vote down what most victims, most people who know about this matter require. And that is a judge-led public inquiry with full powers to get to the bottom of these matters.
Well, it's not going to change at the moment, and of course that thumping majority that Starmer has will see to that anyway. But if it's any consolation to any of us calling for the same thing, totally echo your words, Harvey. The story certainly isn't going away just yet. Thank you, Harvey Proctor. Great to have you with us, former Tory MP. It is worth just looking over the details of what Harvey Proctor went through and some of the people that were accusing him of, oh my God, I mean, the list was, this is the whole Carl Beach thing and goodness knows what else. And, the alleged Westminster paedophile, it's horrific what he went through. Turned out to be a crock of lies. But before anybody established that, as Harvey Proctor just said then, there were many people in high office that were coming out saying, this is outrageous, these people are going to be called to account. Some of those people don't seem to have quite the same level of enthusiasm for an inquiry on the industrial rape, molestation, violent attacks, consistently over many years on young girls. Some of the same voices that agitated to stick Harvey Proctor, an innocent man, into jail, have very little to say on this. I mean, don't you find that in itself a little bit weird? Send Harvey to the chiller, he's done nothing wrong. All the people that were perpetrators of child grooming gangs, and just as bad, those that protected the perpetrators directly or even indirectly, should also be in the dock. So we'll chase up Harvey and these scurrilous lies that came from a really unreliable witness in the first place. We'll chase him. We'll even go on the TV and talk about it. But the other lot, no, we don't need to talk about that anymore. I think we've done that. No, we haven't done it. And when the smart money says that this is still going on, then surely, if nothing else, for that reason, if no other, you need some level of inquiry. Doesn't have to be quite the same as the Baroness J inquiry. You could do something that will be more thorough because it will only focus on this case. You could insist on some kind of expediency in getting it through without losing credibility or the thoroughness required to investigate this kind of thing. You could do all of that. You could tick all of those boxes. You could get right to it rather quickly. And you could establish who those people are, the perpetrators and the enablers. And the enablers are anyone who tried to cover it up. It's not hard to understand. I did notice that Reform UK said they would have an inquiry if there wasn't one. Now, these came out of Nigel Farage's mouth in an interview yesterday. I don't know whether he's going to regret saying it. I hope he doesn't regret saying it. I don't dispute that Nigel would have meant it, but mobilising an inquiry, saying it and doing it are two different things, and that could be not only incredibly costly, but the apparatus to set it up properly so it doesn't look like a sort of political party just having a go at something would be tricky. But fair play if he can do it, because that's where we need to get to establish that it isn't going on when lots of people say it still is. And also just to clearly establish, and I don't think it would be too much to ask, to have a look at the entirety of the story, how it went on for so long, who were the people behind the scenes of this. I think they're reasonable questions that most people would like to see an answer to. But Keir Starmer apparently doesn't. And I'll just briefly say what I said at the very beginning. Surely as a politician, as a Prime Minister, as a lawyer, you would have an instinctive thirst for new information. That goes with the territory. It's in your DNA, isn't it? Oh, there's new information. Oh, there's stuff we didn't examine. There's things that are yet to be properly, legally spoken about. Isn't that right in you, intrinsically, within your neurological system, your biology, everything you cut you in half, that's what you stand for. To investigate new facts, stuff we didn't know, people not joining the dots, things that we can look back up now and see where they can... Of course you would be thinking that.